Hey everyone, welcome to part 9 of my Let's Build for Ruby and Rails developers. This is, like I said, part 9. So we're digging into, the previous couple parts we were digging into the view of the app, kind of getting the feel and look of this thing down. It's nothing special so far, but it is functional and looking okay. So on the surface it looks good, but underneath we don't have any mechanism to post a job or kind of manipulate data realistically. It is under the hood. You could go to the jobs new path and just kind of do your work. So let me show you that if you haven't been following along. So we could just say, hey, let's create a new job. The form isn't there because we're actually going to use a Vue app for this form. But if you were to go to a job and edit one, you would see an actual form in this case. And that's intended because I don't feel like we need the multi-step form that I'm thinking about in this type of view. This would be where maybe you want to make a change to your job listing before it goes live or something like that. So at this state, I think we are ready to kind of get the Vue app going. One thing I wanted to come forward and work on is the seeds real quick. It was pointed out to me that I don't really need the IDs in these seeds. Active Records is just going to take care of that stuff for us. And that's what we were running into, if you recall, when I was trying to I forgot what it was actually, but I was getting errors because those jobs existed, but the database didn't know about them, etc. So we could technically at this point just rerun that seed. So I could just say, maybe I'll do that over here. I don't know if I'll need to kill the server, probably. I am on a part 9 branch, by the way, so if you're following along, make sure you are if you want to be. So let's say Rails DB seed. I'm going to say replant. I think that's gonna work. There we go. I think that should be set up now. So I'll just reboot the server and go back to the app. And we shouldn't really see much of a change, I don't think, besides just some metadata, maybe. Okay, so at this point, I've got Vue already installed. At the very beginning of this series, I think I installed it and Stimulus.js. Both we don't. You could use one or the other in this, but I feel like Vue is going to be more of the very interactive component, where Stimulus will make this kind of more of a reusable way, where we can mount a Vue component elsewhere in the app at some point. This might be overkill of how I'm about to implement it, but I think it could be something that we could use that gives us just a way to mount a new Vue component by calling a specific div with an action or a target on it that connects to both Stimulus and Vue and our app. So quite complex, but I think we can make it work and function the way we want. So what I'll first do is probably get rid of this app in the main root path and create a components directory where I'll store everything. So I'll start with that. And in here, we'll basically house all of the Vue components as we get going. But eventually, this will be where that's going to live. So I'm going to move the app file there. We're going to just call it job form, maybe job form, just like a general app. We'll come back to this. I just wanted to kind of do some cleanup there. What I want to focus on first is the controller side of this. I want to make a reusable component that's a Stimulus controller, if that makes sense. So what we'll need to do is create a new component or controller here. We're going to call it Vue component, because the reason I want to do this is when you mount a Vue app, typically you need like a div in your markup with an ID to refer to tell it the app to actually like initialize within that containing element. And this kind of makes that reusable in a way. So what I want to do is kind of make that work. So what we could do is treat this as a Stimulus controller, but it's also mounting a Vue component. So controller, we'll get Stimulus set up just like so. And then we need Vue. And then what we'll do is export default view component. We still need to make this. So I'll just make a variable and call it view component. That's going to pass in the component and call the function that's extending the controller. That gives us a way to name it dynamically, which is kind of neat. So for the controller, we'll have its own component-based controller that's extending the main stimulus controller. So crazy, probably too much, but I'm just going with the flow here. So we need to do our targets for stimulus. If you're not familiar with stimulus, I have maybe 1 or 2 videos on it, but it's not that hard to pick up. I might do more of a little series-based compilation of stimulus, how to use it, best practices and whatnot. I just haven't gotten there. So expect that maybe to come. So what we want to do is get the actual element. Just call element, and then we'll say this dot mount target. So the whole goal here is to use this target to mount a brand new component that's going to be essentially reusable in the app anywhere. Now I don't know that I'll need this, but you never know if you need to add an additional view component or view controller. That's going to make this, do the work we need. So what I'll do is we need an instance of Vue to kind of always have access to. So I'll actually throw this on the window element. There's probably better ways to go about this, but up to y'all how you want to do that. And then I'm going to new up a Vue instance. Within that, you can pass quite a few things, but we're essentially going to pass our element as the main identifier. And then we'll render the component just like this. Now notice this passes in this component, so now we've got access to that. What I want to do is, I need a base data store for this, so I'm going to pass that too, so you can do that here. So I'll say data.store, and we still need to import that and create it. So I'll do that at the very top. And we'll just call it store, I think, or data from store. Something like that. I can type. So this will be kind of a home to, I don't know if you've ever heard of Vuex, but it's kind of like a very primitive version of that, where we have some state that we'll have by default, and we can manipulate as we go. And it's kind of just this global place where I can reach for this data and have access to it in a way that wouldn't really be as easy otherwise. So think of it like that. For now, let's get that actually added. So I'll create a new folder. Actually, I think it's going to be called store and index. And by default, if you call it index, the import mechanism here, we'll just assume it's going to look for that file. So we'll say index.js. And in here, we'll have some data that we're going to essentially stub out for the job form. So I can start with what data we're going to need, store, let's call it that. And then we could just export default store, or if we need to export more, we can add it there. So this will take shape as basically our form object. So we'll have a form object, and then I want to make a multi-step form, so I'm going to have like a step parameter, and we'll default to the first step because that makes sense when you load up the app. And then we'll have some details about the job, and maybe how much it's going to cost. Let me go to our controller to kind of get, well, actually I'll go to our model. It's going to tell us more. So we go to job. I want to basically pull in all these comments for now. We'll probably need to update this as we go, but I just want these to reference. We don't need ID. We do need company name. So company, we could just say null to start with that one, because we want it to be basically nothing until you enter something. Company website. Might make sense to do the old 2 up, right? So that, and then I could just get rid of this because that's bugging me. Company website, null. And compensation range. Do we want to default? We'll just say null. And compensation type. Let's see, estimated. Is estimated? Yeah, that would be if it's contract. So estimated hours, null. Let's see, featured. Don't know that we need that. No, that's more of an admin level thing. So we'll leave that back. Same with featured until. Headquarters we'll keep. We'll just start at null. Link to apply. Price will be null to start, I think. Or maybe we could default to the first price. So what do we want to charge for a job? I'm not sure. Maybe $199 to start. I don't know. But we'll want a base price too, I think. So maybe the same. We'll have to figure out pricing. I have no idea. Remote. We can just default to like yes. Because on the field, I'll probably do like yes or no. We don't need to worry about the slug. The status will be kind of a background thing. Title, definitely. Years of experience. Cool. And upsell type. We'll default to like no thanks. Like just I don't want an upsell, buddy. Okay. So I'm setting these to null just because we want basically to reset the field when the Vue app loads. We want it to be nothing. But if you want actual defined elements on the job form, we'd have this set up. So I think we should be okay here. We still need to accommodate the descriptions though, so can't forget those. Because we have, let's see, description and company description. So let's do company description. And description. A lot of fields, but, and then we need company logo too. So company, and I'll just sort these. I think I know how to. Maybe I won't. We'll leave it like that. Okay, so we'll say that for now. Our component is right here. We've got data store. We'll see if we even can do what we're wanting to do here. Now we don't have Webpack dev server or anything running in the background. I have a little key command to do that, but if you don't, if you run bin Webpack dev server, should get up and running. It's going to make your life a lot easier when you're working with stuff like Vue or React. And we already get an error because why? Okay, it's assuming that app.vue file we had is inserted, but we don't have that actually in the app yet. So we'll have to get that mounted next. So we got the store, which is just a place to work for now. And then here's where our actual app's currently set up. But what we'll do is depend on the stimulus controller to set this stuff up. So we don't actually need this at all because we're importing it from the actual stimulus library or folder over there. So that, hopefully that makes some sense. I'm gonna actually remove these comments. Probably throw this last. There we go. Okay, so that's the start. And then save this stuff down, get rid of this space. Now our app loads, we're getting, it's assuming there's still a hello Vue pack. I think that's just because of cache stuff going on. If you run Webpack server again, it should go ahead and maybe recompile. Yeah. Okay, cool. So if we go to jobs new, I'm gonna have to sign in again, I think. Yeah, Andy at webcrunch. Password. If we go to a new job, I need to put a button to do this so I don't have to keep typing it. So we don't have anything on this form, as you can see, so there's just literally nothing in this view. If we go back to jobs new, we have where we will mount the app. So what I want to do is initially get that working at this point. We'll get a data controller div. That's part of how Stimulus works. So I'll do div, and then we'll say data controller equals jobs. And for now, we'll leave that as is, and then just kind of remove that. And then data target within it here is going to be the actual mounting of the app. So if we say data target, and if we just say jobs mount, this should give us what we're after in theory. So if we look in our console, I don't have any output or anything, but there's stuff maybe going on under the scenes. One additional thing I want to do is have some hookins for Rails. Specifically needs some CSRF tokens and stuff to go through the requests of each Vue element. That gives us a way to kind of hook into that stuff and use it as needed. And we also need some stuff to kind of help around turbolinks, because it's not quite friendly in some instances. So what I'll do is add a new source folder in our JavaScript folder. So source, and I want to just create ones called job form. And we'll need to add a few things to get this to work as necessary. So of course we need view from view, and then we need this library I want to get called KY, and then one called turbolinks adapter, specifically for Vue. And then we'll say view.use that. Then finally, view.prototype. I'm going off some notes here if you're wondering. I'm not just like remembering this shit, because this stuff, there's no way. Like, you have to reference something. And so I'll do ky.extend. We want to hook into the hooks side of it. So before a request, we'll do this, and then request, we'll pass the CSRF token in the headers. It's kind of a necessary step for Rails to make sure this stuff is secure. So it's going to look like X CSRF token. Then we need to get meta value, which is a helper I'm going to import. We'll say CSRF token. This is in every Rails app. If you go to the application, there's a CSRF method that's getting injected into the head. It should be there by default. I don't think you need to add it at all. Then we need some helpers I'm going to add. So yet another folder, helpers. And in here, we'll just have an index file. And we need to import that from this file too. So I'll go back to that and do that. Just the meta tag one though. So we'll just say get meta value from helpers. And I'll add that to that file just so it's basically, I like to have a helpers file that's just full of functions that do things that basically just return a thing for you. And you can import each individually if you do this export to notation in front of it. So get meta value, we'll get a value or a name of the element of a meta tag. So we'll just get the element equals find element, which we need to add a helper method for that. So document head, and then name. And then we could say if the element exists, we'll return it. Its contents, get attribute. That's part of JavaScript. Content. Okay, and then we need this find element function, which could honestly just be a query selector, but let's do it anyway. So export function, we can use it here. So find element root selector. If type of root equals string, selector equals root, and then root equals document, just kind of a fancy way of saying return a query selector. Selector. There we go. Okay, so those two combined give us what we're after in this area. So now we have a one-liner where we pass the name of the thing we want to grab the content from. It goes and fetches that through a query selector, through that little find element function we've got. And then we get back to content, which is going to be a token we need for the forms to actually process and do their magic. So that's just a little buy-in I wanted to get going and set up before we continue. I need to install these other libraries with Yarn, so I'll do that. So we'll say yarn add, I think it was KY, and Vue turbo links. Let me confirm that real quick. Yeah. Go fetch those. There we go. Okay. Not sure if I have the Vue plugin on this. I might go get it. Vue on add-ons, Vue.js. I do have it. Vue DevTools. Okay. So we don't see anything yet because we don't have the app mounted quite yet. We'll have to get that going. Let's do that on our next step. So looks like I missed a comma here. So now we need our actual jobs controller to do the magic here. So we'll say jobs controller and import job form from components job form. That's our main root Vue app is what I'm calling that one. And then import Vue component, the one we just created in the same folder, from .Vue component. Then we could say export default Vue component and pass in job form. So that's just a fancy way of making that all reusable. If you want to mount it the regular way with Vue, you totally can. Let's get this back. So we don't have anything in our actual job form component yet, so I need to add something there to confirm this stuff works. I think this should actually load the Vue app, I think. Data target. Let's double check our work here. I can't even get this to mount, is what I'm wondering. Job form, we've got this. Vue component, we got that. So on connect, let's double check this is doing what we want. So console.log hello world. So our there it is. We've got Vue now, but I don't get an actual log. Oh yeah, I do. There we go. Hello world. Good deal. I think I just needed to reboot the dev server for Webpack, which is annoying, but I had to. Okay, and right now we don't see anything, so let's see if we can make that work. All right, so one thing I did realize is I forgot one little thing here. Retry equals 0. I think that's in the right spot. And then we need to actually import this file into our main packs library. So jobs, import source jobs form or job form. I'm not sure if it should go before controllers or after. I'm going to say after. And I typed that bit wrong, I think. I need a semicolon. Okay, give me something here. Come on, y'all. This should have some text outputting, but it's not. Nothing. Man, this is annoying. Wow. Jobs new should totally do this. We need to break the server too. Let's try. What in God's name is happening? Literally rendering the app, but there's no component. Data controller jobs, data controller jobs mount. This should totally work. Application, we've got controllers, our source job form. We've got our source job form stuff here. We've installed all of these. Vue prototype. We're doing an extension to include the CRSF token. Got our store, which should be fine. Our Vue component is where I'm thinking maybe something's not right, but it doesn't make sense based on its current form. Maybe if I just new it up without the window. It doesn't do anything. Wow. I just don't know. And I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die. Let's see. Console. Literally has our element come back. So guys, it took me forever and a year to figure out why the hell on earth you can't use the variable name element in the new Vue instance. I guess maybe it's a reserved word, but holy shit, if you just remove like L, make it L, this will finally work. So there's our test. I've been trying so hard to figure this out, and I had to go review some old work on the other app I'm working on, and everything under the sun. So holy shit. But anyway, we've got our app mounted now. Don't make that mistake. So don't name this element is my basic advice there. So we got our app added, our little helpers added to get the additional logic into our hooks. So before any requests are made from the Vue app, we do a setting of the XCSRF token, which is part of the Rails app. It's just kind of a safe way to submit forms and accept data. We'll be pushing data to the server, so that's one reason I wanted to do that. And it's all the Ajax, so we need that in that step. So on top of that, I kind of refactored this file to kind of make it look a little more in line with what I'm thinking would transcend down the scope. So controllers from our stimulus installation, then our actual application style sheets, so Tailwind particularly, and then our extra source of JavaScript gets into the mix. So now, honestly, the hard part's over. We got the app mounted. The rest is just kind of hooking up the logic and getting data to talk to our app a little better. So this video has taken me a while, but I'll continue on just getting some scaffold set up for the form itself so it looks a little bit nicer, and then we'll continue in the next to kind of round out more of the form fields and get the logic set up between the multi-step forms. So why don't I dig in and get like the basic layout of the form set up, and we'll go from there. So let's start with the form itself first, I think, and then we'll continue down into the lower part. So we'll have probably a pagination step at the very top that's going to kind of hook into where you're at in the process. We'll figure that out in a second, but I want to get like a main containing class going on. So let's do py16, and maybe I could just use that as the root div. Within that class, we'll have kind of a container itself. So relative max width of 4XL, P4 to start with. Maybe we'll set that in the center. Give it some background color, so white for now. Rounded. Shadow will be slight. And we'll put some margin on the bottom on the large screen maybe. I'll just do it all together. And a border. There we go. So this will contain our form, which I'll probably extract each input into its own little component, but we'll get to where we can do more with that once this gets probably massive based on the amount of fields we need. So yeah, and probably each step will have its own component. So let's do initial look and feel here. So cool, so that's like one group of form. Let's just make sure it's in the same space. Yep. Okay, so then our post form, we can maybe add some wrapping element to this. So I don't know, 10 to give it some oomph. There we go. Cool. So on the new templates, it's going to be relative to the, maybe I'll just make the actual components for the job, so this will make more sense. So let's start with that. So maybe I'll make one called job info, where you actually enter the information, and we'll pass in job as an instance, as a prop I should say. And let's do that next. So maybe I'll make a folder within components called steps. Say job info. We need our typical, I think I have snippet view. Yeah, there's a snippet library for Vue you can go grab if you're using VS Code, but that should get you where you're after. So in here will be the actual form, I think. The main form, we'll keep the form out here. How about that? And then the inside will be additional stuff. So let's do that. So form action will be whatever. Let's say we're gonna submit.prevent. You can do that with Vue. Just submit it by default. And we want to make this a multi-part form because it's going to accept some images, so can't forget that. And then we'll start there. And then what's neat is we could even hook into our step method too now. So if I just say if, I'll set these up in a second. So if, oh God, if step equals to 1, we'll show this particular component. For now, I'm going to make this like just a skeleton, so job info, start there, and then basically copy this down. So let's get our steps going. We're gonna have 3, I think, so we'll say preview and purchase. That's where you actually check out. So let's make those components. And we need to define those components, but first let me get the scaffold of this. Same here. Okay, we'll come back to those in a second. Well, maybe I'll just say like preview, just so we can see that we're doing something. Purchase. Come back to the form, and we need like our initial step method as a data attribute here, I think. So we can say data return. I'm going to use our scoped, like our actual root data that we imported way earlier. So let's first define those components just so I don't forget. And we just need to call job info, job preview, job purchase. So now that's set up, we won't get any errors, and we need to import those now. So import job info from steps. I don't think I need to see components, no, steps. And the next one will be preview. And we'll go down, oh, purchase. Okay, and save that down, and return data. We'll want to actually import our root data here too, so I'll do that. So import, I'll call it root data. We can call it whatever you want. So root or from store. I might not have that path right, but we'll find out. So then we could say step will be root this dot root form dot step. Since we've got our data on, I don't think we need this at the moment. Actually, I'm gonna leave it right there. We've got our data on the Vue instance when we mounted it. We should be able to kind of use that as the root. So now we have a root to that. let's see, we don't have jobs info, job info steps. There we go. I needed a slash there. Oops. What? Oh, it tried to autocomplete for me. There we go. I think that might do it. Cool. So here's job info. Now we need ways to like tell it go next or back. So we could do that with maybe within the thing. What I'll do there, I think you can emit events from children to the parent. So let's do that. Maybe just add some buttons for now. Get some actual like maybe some styles going here. Font black. We can use Tailwind inside here all the same, which is awesome. So text like for Excel, just to give it some scope, and then we'll just render a button for now. We could say at click.prevent, and then pass in a method that says back, maybe. One that's next. I have the syntax wrong, but and I'm gonna just make them look like buttons. So I think I have some defaults in the actual template we used. So let's grab that, and this actually needs to be a function. What we can do with those then is pass in, it's going to be assumed we're passing params to this because we're passing that job down. So on here we'll have, I'm so used to Rails, props, excuse me, and then we'll pass job through as a prop, and here you want to like make sure you type check it, so we're expecting an object, and we definitely want it required to true, otherwise that's no good. Then we can do our methods to go next and previous. So actually, if it's job info, we won't need back. So just next in this case. So that's going to just be a method. And we'll say next, which will pass just an event we're going to emit, like a custom one. So we'll say this dot emit next step, and then on preview we can do something similar. We're going to have back and forward on this though, so we'll say methods next prev. And we do need to do the same thing we did with purchase or info here. I'm just going to copy this bit. Same for this one actually, so I'll just paste that in, paste this one in. Okay, that gives us two new methods. We'll do the same thing, so this dot emit next step, and then this dot emit prev step. Okay, that sets us up there. Here we're gonna kind of follow suit with the same patterns. I'll just add in the back button. With Vue, you need that parent div. It's like the same with any JavaScript app. I think it's a funny thing that's still a problem like we haven't solved. Like, why can't I just have the same div, or the template be the wrapping thing? I don't know. Prev, okay, and I think that should do that part. We need to do purchase now, so I'll just do that. This one we won't have next. All right, and we will delete that. We need our methods now, so I'll steal this one. I should like preface all of this that I'm no super expert with Vue. I've used it in the past, so there's probably ways to refactor this a ton. So if you're screaming at your screen, I apologize, but we'll see what's going on here. So right now, if I click next, nothing happens. We don't really have anything other than we're preventing default on it. And that's important. We don't want to go anywhere, expect the browser to take any action. We want the JavaScript to do the work. So what we'll do is go back to our main form and actually listen for those events now. So if each step div that we have, we can actually listen for next step and do an actual function. So the whole point is to go all the way up to the parent here and call these methods to implore the next step or previous step. So for preview, we'll have next step and previous step. So handle prev step. I feel like I might have that wrong, but we'll find out. And prev step equals handle prev step. So we're listening for these events that we've emitted from these actions. So these methods, which are getting called when we click on this thing, comes down here, emits this event, the Vue app sees it, absorbs it, and then we collect it here where we see a next step, assuming you're on this step, and then handles the next step in proportionate to that actual step. So if that wasn't confusing, I don't know what wouldn't be. But let's do the logic here. That's going to be methods within our main form component, and we'll handle next step by just doing an iterative thing with JavaScript as like a looping kind of thing. So this dot step is already set to the default from our root path. So in this case it would be 1. If you remember, it's basically pulling in from our store at this point right here. And we're setting that way back when we mounted the component in the controller. So we're mounting it here. That data is actually getting piped into the instance itself. So we have it on the root instance. It's basically just a way to say it's connected to the main app at all times. Then we could say handle previous step. And I'll close that one off. And this will be the reverse. So this dot step minus minus. And that should do the trick, I think. Let's verify. Nothing. Okay. What's going on? Job is not defined on an instance but referenced during render. Okay, so we need to still pass, I believe, for interesting. Oh, okay. I don't have an instance of job on this actual part. So we could say job will be the same thing. So we'll port the default job from the root, which we'll manipulate with this form as we go. So that's pulling again from our store, which is this object right here. I might need to go, I feel like it, yeah, I'm going deep with form too. So that should hopefully work at this point. Nope, still not. Let's double check our work on job info. I'm not quite sure why this is barking at me. I might redo the server real quick and see if that's possibly the reason. Sometimes that happens. Okay, so that was clicked. We're still on the same page though. I need to advance the step and it isn't. Okay, so something's weird. Handle pre-step is not defined in instance but referenced during render. I'm trying to default to step 2 and it seems to do what I want, but the other stuff isn't. So let's debug this real quick. If I refresh, handle prev step is not define on instance, but reference during render. Oh, typo, guys. Jesus. Really? There. No? It's amazing that next doesn't work, but back does. I don't get it. Why don't we start with, instead of on our main job app, why don't I just start on 1 instead of defaulting from there? We'll start with 1. Does this go up? It doesn't do anything. That doesn't make any sense. This should... I'm not getting anything back. This is so weird, guys. I'm clicking the event. It should go and like upgrade everything. Steps plus. You know what I did wrong, guys? I've got the damn... You probably saw this. I need these on the components themselves, and I don't have it on this one, and I totally missed that. I've been staring at the screen for too long. There we go. Okay, so we've got our WYSIWYG, very primitive form builder thing intact now. I'm going to get rid of the console logs that I was trying to debug all this with, and some of this garbage we don't need. Okay, so the whole goal here was to build our interactions so we have our multi-step. I don't really like using buttons already in a form. By default, a button element will submit a form, so I'm going to just go ahead and keep them anchor tags for now, and then we'll go back. So this is our basic structure, of which we'll start to unfold way more logic. But right now, I have a working multi-step form. What I want to do is just update. I was, again, debugging, so I'm going to go back and change my store step to 1 by default. We'll always default to 1 when we load the page. You can always change that where you need to. But if I hit next, we go to the preview stage. If we get next, we get the purchase stage, and back. So perfect. Doesn't look like much now, but in the future parts, we'll start scaffolding out the form inputs. Hopefully making my brain explode less getting this shit set up. So it is, at least at this point, mounted in the app, which means I think the more technical side of the work is done until we get to the Ajax stuff. But for now, we'll just kind of do some Vue.js coding and continue on. So I'll see you in the next part. Sorry if this part was a little complicated or challenging to follow. Again, I'm doing this thing kind of unscripted, unedited as much. I mean, obviously some edited where I'm just totally lost, but it's way less or way more relaxed than typical. So appreciate you following along if you are. All right, I'll see you in the next part. Hello Rails is my new course on Ruby on Rails. I'll teach you Ruby on Rails from the ground up. Visit hellorails.io for more information.